When you're talking about an Olympic Games and participating in an Olympic Games, it's always about dealing with pressure. If you are able to cocoon yourself from the expectations from outside, you will do well. Take the shooting team, for example. We had built the shooting team up for Rio. We had done so for Tokyo, and all have talent. There's no question that the Indian shooters have immense talent, but unfortunately, wasn't translated into results. Saurav Ghosal, thank you very much for joining me. You've done it for over 2 decades. I mean, at the top level, you have been able to soak in the pressure, create a niche for yourself, make a mark. And that's why on Olympic Day, I wanted to do this with you. There are a host of young athletes, 17, 18, 19, 20. What's your kind of advice to them? How do they deal with expectations of something like an Olympic Games or an Asian Games or events of a great kind of magnitude?
So I think first of all, you kind of almost have to accept that the Olympics Games is like the biggest thing in the world, right? It is the biggest thing in the world. So recognition of that and internalizing that and accepting it is very important, right? So that you don't go there and you suddenly feel, oh my God, I'm here at like a big games and I really need to perform and things like that. I think you need to start accepting that much before you get on that flight to Paris in this case. Once you've accepted that, you almost have to fool your mind into thinking that even though it might be the biggest games in the world, I basically just need to produce what I produce in practice every day, right? And it's just every match is just another practice round, right? Where if I'm producing in practice every single day, there is no reason for me not to be able to replicate that on another given day, but in a match situation, right? So if I can manage to do that, it pulls the pressure out of me of trying to do it on a particular day, right? You're basically replicating what you're doing every single day, right? So you're prepared to do that. The other thing I would say is that focus on, small details about your sport in terms of what makes you tick, like what makes you play better. And if you can do that, what it does is, again, it stops your mind from thinking about 20,000 other things, right? There's a saying, an idle mind is a devil's workshop, right? So if your mind is occupied by thinking about X, Y, Z about your sport and about what you really want to do at a micro level, then the chances are that you're not going to think about the consequences of producing a bad round or the consequence of a loss or the consequence of not playing as well as you want to, or thinking about what if I'm really nervous, what if I suddenly get injured and things like that. So these thoughts create negative energy in your mind, right? So if you can focus on these small things in your mind, it takes you away from all these other thoughts and it focuses your mind. At the end of the day, you're going to produce your best if you're fully focused.
So, for example, when a player says, and if in cricket, for example, you're playing a World Cup, but you still say, oh, it's just another match. In an Olympic Games, it's just another tournament. I want to condition my... Is it possible when you say such things? Is it for the media just to divert pressure, or do you actually mean it as a sports person? I'm playing an Asian Games final. It's not just another match. It's a different match.
Yeah, but I feel like, it's not easy. Let's put it that way. It's not easy, right? But for me, like, if I go into an Asian Games final and I say that today is the day and no matter what, I have to produce the best performance of my life, right? The amount of pressure I'm putting on myself, saying that if I don't produce that best performance of my life today, I'm losing, right? But if I tell myself that, you know what, I have done this, obviously for the last 10, 15 years or whatever it is, and I've obviously prepared specifically for this tournament for the last 3 to 6 months, and I have put the plans in place in my head to play against whoever, and now I'm playing the final, and I know this guy, and I know what I want to do, and I've done it in practice, right? And I've done it. All I need to focus on is on replicating that performance that I did 1 week back or 2 weeks back in practice today, right? And that is what I'm focusing on. When I'm playing, I am not thinking, oh, today's the Asian Games final. Of course, there are points, where you kind of go above and beyond yourself a little bit because it's the Asian Games final or the Olympic final where, you're feeling really tired or, mentally you feel down and you kind of, for that split second, you tell yourself, okay, you know what? It's just one day today, right? After this, it's done, right? So that kind of gets you going. But for the general kind of feeling that I have when I'm playing or before I'm going on to play, at least for me, I'm not thinking, okay, today's the Asian Games final and I really need to do well or whatever. So, a good example would be, like in 2014, I played the decider for the team final, which we won. the Asian Games. And going into that match, I was not thinking that, that this is the Asian Games final and this is our chance to win it because we've never won it. I was thinking, you know what, this is great. I have the opportunity here to create history. And I have the opportunity to create history because I have set precedent in my practice that I can produce this. Right? And that is what I was focusing on, that, what did I do in practice to be able to play and give myself this opportunity today, right? To be able to show everyone that I am what I am and I can do what I can do. So I think that is important. And then, like you said at the very outset, we hyped up, for example, the shooting team for the last two Olympics, and unfortunately for them, they couldn't deliver on that promise. So I think talking about what is going to happen at the games is for the outside world. It's not for the athlete themselves. For the athlete themselves, they almost have to be detached.
Zen.
Yeah, detached from it all. So, if I remember correctly, when PV Sindhu won her first Olympic medal, she kind of said that she was off social media for like 2-3 months or whatever, right? Why has she done that? Right? Because she wants to kind of get away from everything and just focus on what shots she needs to play, how she needs to prepare, and not worry about what everyone else is saying.
Neeraj Chopra does this so well. I mean, after a point, he just disappears, cocoons himself from the outside world. To hell with what you guys are building up. I will do this. This is my world. I will go and through.
Yeah, I think that's really important, because if you get caught up with the outside world, there will be a lot of overly positive and a lot of overly negative reaffirmations coming through, right? And that is not genuine. You just need to focus on what you need to do, and you believe in what you are capable of. And the outside world has no idea about that. Right? Only you have the idea, and maybe your close team. Right? What am I actually capable of in the next 2 months or 3 months? So I think it's important to, cut yourself off from the outside world to a great extent. And those are again, I don't want to use the word sacrifice, but those are the choices you make to produce your best when it really matters.
So what you're trying to say is, for example, today when we are broadcasting it, 1 month to go for Paris, right? 26th July. So if you're an athlete who's qualified, you have to shut yourself up from the media, from the pressures, from what the talk is, from the build-up, and just do your thing. Just do your thing in your zone.
Yeah, I think, obviously, there are certain media commitments. So there are going to be questions to you. Like, for example, like last year before the Asian Games, one of the questions is, how many medals is squash going to get, for example? Like, you asked me that.
Yeah.
Right? And obviously, we're going with a young team, so I'm trying to play down the expectations as much as possible because I know more the expectations, the guys are going to crack quicker. Right? So I'm playing it down but in my head, I know what we are capable of. Right? I know that we are capable of bringing back 3 golds at least. And capable of doing a lot better than what we've ever done, right? But I'm saying, this is what it's going to be, and I'm not going back and listening to, what I've said or reading what someone else has said about, how many medals we're going to win or what I am going to personally win or anything of that sort. So literally, like 1.5 months, the only time that I am paying attention to anything with regards to the media is when I am speaking to the media people and they're asking me questions.
So you don't read much?
Not like leading up to the tournaments, no. Like I kind of like try and keep myself away from it all because that is in my control, right? The media commitments is not entirely in your control,
yeah,
right? Because there are certain responsibilities, and it's also like for example, for a sport like squash, it's great that there is that media attention at these games, right?
Yeah, and there is the other side, right? I mean, people like us, people who want to do Olympic sport. If I don't get a Saurav Ghosal to hide squash, 100%. Then what do I do?
So that is a responsibility that I have as an athlete, right? So I think to the sport, right? So I think those responsibilities I must undertake. But when that responsibility ends with me giving you an interview or someone else an interview, whether it be print or video or whatever it is, I don't have to read or listen or do whatever what anyone else is saying, right? I actually don't even like entertain conversations with like other people, even in the squash world, who will start saying, oh, how many medals will you win, blah blah, you should win this and blah blah. I'm like, yeah, hopefully, and I will just be like, yeah, okay, I'll just walk away or whatever. Not because I'm not interested in that conversation, but because I feel like, when it comes down to the crunch of it, all these things play in your mind, right? Something somewhere or the other, it will come up in your mind, and I'll be thinking like, oh man, like so many people thought I'm going to win the gold here.
Final 2 questions. One, however much you prepare, Not always do things go to plan. Take the Manu Bhaker case, for example, in Tokyo, the gun malfunction. Now, what do you do? I mean, all of a sudden you've done great, and she lost by 2 points, right? 582 was qualification, she got 578 or 580, something like that. Now, in such a situation, when you know that you're good enough, but things, Abhinav Bindra, the footboard was unstable, right? So, what do you do? I mean, how do you condition your mind to saying, oh, this has come now, but this is the Olympic Games, his sighter broke. And I still remember in Rio, and I was more tense than he was. And I'm like, what are you supposed to do? He said, what? Go shoot. I mean, not everybody is Abhinav Bindra, but in such situations when things go out of your control, how do you get it back?
I think Abhinav is the best example. Like what he has done in terms of the detail with which he prepared is unbelievable. I think there's something else that I've also learned from one of the other squash players, James Willstrop, who's been helping me for the last year and a half. And one of the things he told me is that, everyone visualizes, right? Everyone visualizes about, game day and what they're going to do. So he actually asked me, what do you visualize about? I'm like, I visualize about how I'm going to hit the ball and what I'm going to do when someone hits it in a particular place and how well I'm going to play and how well I'm going to win. And he goes like, flip it around, visualize everything under the sun that can go wrong on the day. Anything and everything, right?
You're ready.
Because he said that if you visualize all the negative things that could possibly happen, when it actually does happen, you won't panic because you've thought of it in your head, right? It's not going to be easy to deal with still, but it is going to be where you are prepared to kind of get it done because it's not uncertain anymore. It's not uncertain anymore.
Last question. I mean, when we build up a Neeraj Chopra, defending Olympic champion, Asian Games champion, everything in the world, we are starved of champions. You know the guy. I mean, how does he sort of stay in the present? Give me a sneak peek, because you as athletes, you all have interacted, in ways which are different compared to the media. Yes, he's a good friend, but my interactions with him will be different compared to your interactions with him. So, if you could make me understand the mind of someone like that.
So I think Neeraj, the first time I actually met him was in the Asian Games village in 2018. It was in the gym, and it just so happened that we both needed to use the squat track, and we were basically alternating our sets on the squat track. And the one thing that stood out for me when we were like in the gym for like 45 minutes to an hour together was that how simple he was. His whole thought process was just that, मैं कितना दूर फेंक सकता हूँ. It was as simple and as, at the lowest basic level as it possibly could be. It wasn't about, can I win the medal? Can I become world champion? Nothing. He was just literally like, मैं कितना दूर फेंक सकता हूँ. That was it, right? And again, I met him again in 23 at the Asian Games village again in the dining hall, and we had a chat. And he actually came. I missed him actually. He actually came up to me. This was after team final and all. He was congratulating me and everything. And that vibe and that sense hasn't left him, right? He is still worried, or I wouldn't say worried, but he's still focused on how far he can throw. And that is all that matters to him. And I think that is what makes him produce the performances that he produces on a consistent basis. Because, of course, he's a star in India right now and in the athletics world in general, right? But all those things are very, very ancillary to him. At his core, he still wants to throw the furthest he can possibly throw. And I think that is the key to being grounded and humble, which will help him and anyone else, right, be the best they can be for the longest that they can possibly be, as long as their body and mind allows it. And whether he wins the gold again this time or not is not because he hasn't prepared properly or his headspace is not in the right whatever. There might be someone else who might throw better,
yeah.
Right? But it's not due to of any shortcoming on his part. He is a great athlete example for anyone to have, and there are others. Even Abhinav is same. If you ask Abhinav what was he thinking about, right, when he was at his peak, he was thinking about how well can I shoot. He's not thinking about, man, I need to win this medal, blah, 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 blah. Because these are all things which cloud your judgment and they kind of almost pollute you in your quest for excellence to produce at the very, very basic level. And if you can produce at the basic level, then you're going to produce at the macro level.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant talk. I mean, this is why it is an Olympic movement and it's not a World Cup competition like something else. There's a difference between a World Cup and an Olympic movement. There's ritual, there's what he's talking about. There's something, there are values that are at the very base of this Olympic movement. And that's why an Abhinav Bindra is a great, that's why a Neeraj Chopra is a great, Saurav Ghosal, a 2-decade-long career at the top of Indian squash doesn't happen overnight. There has to be dedication, determination, passion of a very different level. We've got to see how India does, but on Olympic Day, I'm sure any athlete who listens to this conversation will have some idea as to what they need to do for the next 1 month, because it's coming from the very best. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.